The silver mist of dawn clung to the valley like a secret. It was that fragile moment between the stars fading and the earth breathing, a time Elias called the Great Shushing. At 72, his joints moved with a rhythmic creak that matched the floorboards of the farmhouse, but his eyes, clear and the color of rain-washed flint, remained as sharp as they were when he first took the reins of this land. He didn't need a clock, he felt the sun's approach in the marrow of his bones. He stepped onto the porch, the air tasting of damp loam and the faint, sweet promise of clover. To a stranger, the fields were merely dirt and vegetation, but to Elias, they were a living library. Every acre held a chapter of his life, the north ridge where he'd proposed to Martha, the low creek bed where they'd buried the old collie, and the golden expanse of wheat that had seen them through the lean years. The land was waking up, and it was his job to listen to its first morning whispers. The first paragraph of the day was written in the soil. Elias walked to the edge of the vegetable garden and knelt, pressing his palm into the earth. It was cool, yet held a subtle vibration of life. The winter had been long and biting, a season of frozen silences, but now the frost had retreated into memory. He could feel the seeds stirring beneath the surface, tiny engines of green energy beginning their slow, inevitable climb toward the light. He walked toward the barn, the gravel crunching beneath his boots in a steady, meditative beat. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of aged cedar and dried timothy hay. The heavy wooden doors groaned as he pushed them open, admitting a spear of pale gold light that danced with dust motes. His tractor, an old iron beast named Barnaby, sat waiting. It was a relic of a time when things were built to outlast their owners, a symphony of gears and grease that Elias knew better than his own reflection. "Morning, old friend," he muttered, patting the cold metal of the hood. There was no response but the settling of the barn's rafters, yet Elias felt the companionship. In the solitude of the rural life, objects became characters. He checked the oil and tightened a belt, his calloused hands moving with the grace of a surgeon. He wasn't just preparing a machine, he was preparing for a ritual as old as civilization itself, the turning of the earth. By the time he pulled the tractor out into the yard, the sun had crested the eastern hills, spilling liquid amber over the horizon. The dew caught the light, turning the fields into a sea of diamonds. This was the moment the world truly woke. The red-winged blackbirds began their territorial songs from the cattails, and the wind carried the scent of the neighbor's wood smoke. It was a sensory overload that never grew old, a daily rebirth that wiped the slate clean of yesterday's worries. Elias steered the tractor toward the south pasture. This year, he was planting rye, a hardy crop for a year he felt might be demanding. As the plow hit the earth, the smell hit him, the deep, intoxicating perfume of disturbed soil. It was the scent of potential. Every furrow was a promise made to the future, a gamble that the rain would fall and the sun would shine in just the right measure. It was the ultimate act of faith, performed by a man who claimed he wasn't particularly religious. As the morning progressed, the rhythm of the work took over. The roar of the engine became a background hum, allowing his mind to wander through the decades. He remembered his father teaching him how to read the clouds, pointing out the mackerel sky that signaled a change in the wind. He remembered the sweat of his youth, the way his back used to ache with a fire that now felt like a dull, familiar glow. The fields hadn't changed, but he had become a part of their cycle, a seasonal creature. Around noon, he paused at the edge of the woods. He hopped down from the tractor, his legs feeling a bit heavy, and sat on a stump to eat the sandwich Martha had wrapped in wax paper. The silence of the woods was different from the silence of the fields, it was deeper, more watchful. A doe stepped out from the brush, her ears twitching. She looked at Elias, and for a moment, they shared the space, two beings existing in the quietude of the present. Then, with a flick of her tail, she was gone. He thought about the city, where his son now lived. In the city, the wake-up was a cacophony of sirens, grinding brakes, and the frantic energy of people rushing toward invisible goals. Elias didn't judge it, but he couldn't understand it. How could you know who you were if you couldn't hear the earth breathe? Here, the pace was set by the tilt of the planet and the length of the shadows. There was a profound dignity in being beholden to the weather. In the afternoon, the clouds began to gather, heavy, bruised-looking things that tumbled over the hills. Elias watched them with a practiced eye. The air grew heavy, and the birds went suddenly quiet. It was the tension before the release. He didn't rush, he knew the tractor's speed and the distance to the barn. He finished the last row of the south pasture just as the first fat drops of rain splattered against the dusty windshield, turning the dirt into dark, fragrant constellations. The rain came down in a steady, rhythmic curtain. Elias sat in the seat of the idling tractor for a moment, watching the thirsty ground drink. The fields weren't just waking up anymore, they were being baptized. The green of the distant tree leaves seemed to intensify, vibrating with newfound color. This was the nourishment the seeds needed. It was as if the universe had looked down at his morning's work and offered its approval. Back in the barn, he wiped down the tractor with a rag, treating it with the reverence one might show a prize horse. The rain drummed against the tin roof, a percussive masterpiece that filled the cavernous space. He felt a profound sense of enoughness. He didn't need a bumper crop to be happy, he just needed the chance to participate in the process. The fields were his partners, demanding and generous in equal measure. He walked back to the house, his coat damp and his boots caked in the very earth he'd spent the day turning. Martha was in the kitchen, the smell of roasted chicken and herbs meeting him at the door. They didn't need to say much. She saw the state of his clothes and the look in his eyes and knew the day had been good. The south pastures turned, he said simply, hanging his hat on the peg. She nodded, offering him a mug of coffee that warmed his hands. As evening approached, the rain tapered off to a fine mist. Elias sat in his armchair by the window, watching the light fade. The transition to night was just as deliberate as the dawn. The shadows stretched out, reclaiming the furrows he had carved. The fields were settling back into their dreams, but they were different now. They were prepared. They were cradling the potential for 1,000 green shoots that would soon defy gravity. He thought about the lineage of this land. Before him, there was his father, and before that, a man he'd only seen in sepia-toned photographs with a handlebar mustache and a defiant stare. Someday, someone else would stand on that porch and watch the mist. He hoped they would understand that they didn't own the land, they were merely its stewards. You don't own something that can outlive you by 10,000 years. The first crickets began their rhythmic pulse, a heartbeat for the coming night. Elias felt his own heartbeat slowing, syncing with the quiet world outside. The physical exhaustion was a clean, honest weight. It was the kind of tiredness that led to a sleep without dreams, because the reality of the day had been vivid enough. He had done his part in the grand machinery of the seasons. A lone owl called from the barn rafters, a haunting, two-note query that echoed across the yard. It was the night watchman taking over. The world was never truly still, it just changed its players. The fields would spend the night processing the rain, the seeds swelling with the water, the roots reaching down to find their grip. It was a silent, subterranean hustle that Elias found deeply comforting. Before heading to bed, he took one last look out the window. The moon had broken through the clouds, casting a ghostly glow over the fresh-turned earth. The furrows looked like the ribs of the world. Everything was in its place. The cycle was moving, the gears of the natural world turning with a precision that no human clock could ever hope to match. The fields were awake, and in their awakening, Elias found his own peace. He turned off the lamp, leaving the house to the soft glow of the moon. Tomorrow, there would be more work, there was always more work, but for tonight, the promise was planted. The earth was ready, the rain had fallen, and the old man slept, knowing that the green world would be there to greet him when the silver mist returned.